Jeb and Andria met in high school 30 years ago. Then life took them down different paths. They both married, had careers, and children. Later in life, however, they reconnected, fell in love, and have now been married for 10 years. But their marriage may not be what you consider a traditional marriage because Andrea had a secret. What was it? Find out on this edition of The Boomer Beat. Welcome to this episode of The Boomer Beat. And as promised, joining me today are Andrea and Jeb Buffington, who have been happily married now for 10 years. All right, so let's start off right off the top. How did you two meet?
You want to go?
In high school.
Okay, so did you have any kind of relationship in high school, or was he just some guy you saw in the hallway or in your class?
Jeb is 5 years older than I am. So in high school, he was just this cutie patootie, but he was way out of my league.
If only I had known that at the time, life would have been different. The funny thing is, I was closer in age to Andrew's older brother and sister. And I kind of had a crush on her sister, but Andrea was the younger one. She was too young for me, I thought. Although one of my contemporaries dated her. Tony, you're a bad boy if you watch this. But I do remember I was an athletic trainer and she was an athlete. So I would do the athletic taping for some of the athletes, and I remember taping up her legs, her ankles, and thinking, "Ooh, that's a nice leg."
Okay. Okay, so you didn't date when you were in school, and this was in Maine, correct? You were in Maine.
Yeah.
Okay, so
yes.
You didn't date. Moving along, you didn't date in high school, then you decided, to venture out into the world and establish your career. So each of you tell me a little bit about what you did, after you got out of high school, went on to college, or whatever it is that you did.
From high school, I went to Maryland and then onward to Georgia, where I lived for 32 years. And then once the relationship started with Jeb, then that changed. And then we ended up here, but by way of Paris. So
professionally?
Oh my goodness, I've had lots of incarnations, natural foods and massage therapy has been the last 28 years. And I love that I'm a healer at heart. My whole family, my father, my mother.
So during that time period, you did get married to someone else, correct?
I did. I got married to I have two children who 31 and 29 now. And their dad is who I was married to. And then I was out of a relationship with him in 94. And I was in a relationship for 7 years with a woman and then 7 years with another woman. And then
okay. All right. Well, we're going to get back to that whole you in a relationship with someone of the same sex. But let me ask you, Jeb, after you left school, what kind of career path and marital path did you take?
I went to college and then went off to live in Taiwan for a year to finish my undergrad degree. Where I met my first wife, who was a French woman who was studying Chinese like I was in Taiwan. And then went back to the States. She joined me shortly thereafter. We got married. And then I went to grad school out in Arizona after working for a couple of years. And then we were ready to start having kids, and she wanted to have kids in France, where she would be closer to her family. and where the healthcare is better, obviously. And I always loved France. I'd visited several times before, so I was very happy to move over to France with her, where we settled down. And I was a marketing executive for a couple of high tech companies, and then wound up working producing events for an international event. We did a lot of political events, social engagement stuff, media stuff, pretty high end international C-level events. And then I moved back to the States after Andrea and I got back together.
Okay, so let's connect the dots here. So something you said, Andrea, you said that after you divorced your first husband, you were in a relationship with a woman for 7 years. So that immediately raised my eyebrow. And wanting to know, at what point did you discover that you were bisexual? Did you know this all along? Were you experimenting? What was that about?
I think to be totally honest, when I think backwards now, I mean, I'm 57 now. When I think backwards to how it all unfolded until now, I've always been fluid, but I don't think that in the 80s, which is really when I was relating, having first relationships, or late 70s, early 80s, I don't think it was really an option to be gay or to be bisexual or to be, it wasn't a label thing. It was more of I didn't even really know names of things, even though I had friends that were definitely lesbians. It was like, it wasn't an option. Somewhere in my head, it didn't land as there was no light bulb yet. I think at 26 is really where my light bulb was like, I don't really have the issue with sex as much as I do connection, and I would say connection with a person.
Gotcha.
So I really connected in every relationship I've had. I've very much connected with the person.
Okay, so then you and Jeb reconnect after all these years. How did that happen?
Well,
I was living in France at the time,
yeah.
and Facebook was, becoming ubiquitous. And so we became friends on Facebook because I remembered her, and her profile picture looked cute. I mean, to be honest.
Our high school also was very small,
Yeah.
small knit community up in Maine. So you take these people from all over the country and you throw them up in Maine. I mean, from the inner city, DC, New York, beautiful places in California to Florida. I mean, people from all over the country, and some from out of the country.
Yeah.
So when Facebook started, it was just a way to connect with a bunch of our friends from school. I had like 138 friends one day when my daughter told me about Facebook. I said, okay, I'll click on this friend, and then all these friends showed up, and Jeb was one of those people.
It was a good method for me too, living in France, and I had for 20 some years at that point, to stay in touch with my American friends. I needed those voices in English. I needed a bit of my own history, because I sort of parachuted down in France and started a new life and had more different friends, and two boys, two beautiful kids, but something.
I was beginning to date men. I had in 2007, I had a very important breakup.
With the woman.
With the woman, the second relationship I had with a woman, and she was very sick, mentally sick, and that just unfolded itself in the 7 years, to where I realized I really had some problems, and I started looking a lot at myself, and I realized it wasn't men that were the issue for me. It was my first relationship, and with this really boy, we weren't man and woman yet. I mean, we were like 18 and 19 when the relationship started. We were very young people and really clueless in the world. So we were a horrible codependent match. And when I realized that it was about him and not about men, I realized I was going to date men again.
I think there was a lot of hurt coming out of that relationship. And so Andrea found it more comfortable dealing with women
for a long time. For a long time, it was safe. I was abused.
Okay.
It was a logically abusive relationship. And,
okay. So let me ask this question. So you connected on Facebook.
Yeah.
And at what point did you reconnect in person? And how did that evolve?
That was London.
Yeah, what happened was we sort of reconnected and became friends. And because I was so far apart and Andrea was just looking at the idea of dating men again, she would bounce ideas off of me. What do you think of this? What do you think of this? I might move to California.
Because I was clueless. I had not dated much when I got into a relationship with a man. I had several long-term relationships in high school, but that was it until
and then she got married.
Yeah, until this relationship with this man. And so when I began to date men again after connecting with women, because women connect. It doesn't have to be a sexual thing. Women just connect.
That's true.
Ride up in an elevator, chatting about our kids, or
very true.
You know, we connect. And with men, when there's a dating situation, men can be showing you their best when you're dating, but they can also really confuse you. So I ran a lot like that privately on Facebook, and he was always very thorough and thoughtful and kind of bullet points when I would ask a question, and we would talk for hours, but like by private message. And I had wondered if I was even going to stay on the East Coast. We thought we might go to the West Coast, and my sister was there and he knew my sister. So I would talk to him about things that I might not be thinking about with family or men in relationships. And that was actually kind of funny sometimes.
You know, in the old days, before Facebook and all that stuff, people used to develop relationships through correspondence. And in the really old days, you know, you'd write a letter and you'd send it to your paramour across the seas in Europe or back and forth to America. And that's sort of the way we felt, except our correspondence was instantaneous. Right. So it did
for 2 years. I mean, it was 2 years long that we just kind of chit-chatted back and forth, and then I would run things by him like, this guy just said this. What does this actually mean?
So I was her translator.
So you were like the dear Jeb of the dating world. Okay. So then at what point did you actually physically I'm sorry, say that again.
I said I was the dear Abby of the dating world, but I had one reader. The other thing I did want to underline, and I told my boys this growing up, you know, the dating world, and Andrea suggested this a second ago, is really a phony, strange world, right? Where you put on your makeup or your best shirt and you go out and you try and be impressive and you have a line or you don't, or you have terrible, you know, but that's so phony. And I always told my boys, get to be friends first, and then among your friends somebody will, you know, there'll be a moment when suddenly it all changes. And that happened to Andrea and I think we kind of had the inkling as we were writing back and forth that there might be something, a romance developing. And then Andrea's brother happened to be living in London at the time. I was in Paris going back and forth to England fairly often because I had a client and a partner there. And she said, "Oh, hey, I've got my plane tickets. I'm going to be visiting my brother in London." And I said, "Oh, geez, I'd love to see you. That's too bad because you're going to be there just the week before."
No, it was one day. You were leaving so
was
you could
that
have the boys on Wednesday.
Right. Okay. It was one day off.
I was flying in. Yeah.
And so I was, that's too bad. We won't overlap at all. And she changed her ticket. so that she would overlap with my visit to
Oh,
London that week.
I had to look in those eyeballs and see
oh, that is
why I
so
was
sweet.
a human being.
So,
Yeah.
and at that point, I'm in France going, oh yeah, I'm in there.
Yeah.
That's gonna work out great. And she really wants to see me. And
I had to look in his eyeballs.
Now, were you
I'm
still
just that kind of-
married? Were you still married, Jeb, at the time? Oh, you were not.
no,
Okay. So you were
no,
divorced as well.
my marriage broke up in 2000, I think. And I had joint custody of the boys. And I had had a couple of relationships in France, and then a long distance relationship with a woman that I knew in New York. But basically, I was single
Okay.
at the time. And in fact, my last breakup had been hard and hurtful. And I was sort of like, forget this, I've got to concentrate on work for a while. And that also helped us.
Yeah.
I wasn't adding any pressure because I was just saying, okay, I've had it with women for right now. I don't know what I'm going to do. So I'm just going to concentrate on work. And that took the pressure off there.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's fast forward here. So you get back together and you got that attraction going. At what point, Andria, did you share with him that you had been involved with women and that you were bisexual? How did that conversation come out?
I'm sure that it was from the very beginning, because I'm such an open book. I'm not a private, like conceal kind of person. I'm private as in, I don't want to overwhelm people with information they don't want. But I think because we were connecting, it probably
Oh
was
yeah, I
the
knew right away.
It might have even been because of pictures on Facebook that were part of my family. I mean, I've got family photos with my ex-partner Lori and we'll get into that, but we have a child together, and I have mine from my relationship, so they were all siblings together.
So
yeah, Andrea didn't hide that at all, and that just made her more interesting to me. I think it wasn't intimidating. In the end,
I mean, when we started talking on Facebook, the reason I talked to Jeb is because he was so good at being honest. I knew I could trust him. I had a lot of trust issues with men. And I knew because of the school we went to, it was very character building. And I knew I could trust his character, and the words he said had integrity to them. And when he told me things, it wasn't like these guys I would date that would say off the wall things and you didn't know what to do with that information. So Jeb was a very straight shooter from the beginning and intense, and so am I. So it was right from the beginning. I'm sure you saw pictures of Lori and me and the kids, and
yeah, I mean, again, that made Andrea's history to me more just sort of more interesting. Wow, she could have anyone in the world. There's no dividing line for Andrea between men and women. She, you have a relationship first, you find love with somebody. And I thought, wow, what a great compliment to me, in the end that she values a relationship with me enough to say, okay, no, she said, I'm done with women for now, at least. And let's see where this goes.
yeah.
So,
okay, so look, that brings me to my next question. So you said, well, she said she's done with women for now. Do you have any concern that she would somewhere down the road decide, I think I might want to, I might meet a woman and I might be attracted to her. Do you have any concern about that?
I really don't. And it may be naive, but I don't think so. I think, and I don't think this is just Andrea. I mean, Andrea is very,
Monogamous.
yeah, very monogamous. And I totally trust her commitment. I mean, we stood up in front of friends and family. We wrote our own wedding vows and committed ourselves to each other. And I don't think it's anything physical. I think as long as our relationship, we give each other what we need emotionally. The physical follows behind that, I don't think you'd risk that for some, I don't
I,
know what you
I
get
think
from a
by the
woman.
time, I mean, I was 40, 47, 48 when we first started connecting, realizing, wow, we're actually gonna connect different. I knew that it was more romantic. I was feeling I had to figure something out with this guy, and went to London to look in his eyes, and from there on, it was my last relationship. Is always the way that I felt.
Yeah.
It was my last relationship.
Yeah, I think we both feel that
I
way.
think that we connect, and there's history, just not so much history between us, but history that we both went through a school that was super, super intense, kind of outward boundy, on some levels, and very creative in the performing arts and athletics, but pushed you to your limits. So we learned a lot about ourselves. Go ahead.
So let me ask you this, Andria. Was there any confusion among your children? Because, they had seen you in a relationship with a woman, and then you're in a relationship that's been 10 years plus now. Was there any confusion?
No, no. And then I've talked to them very bluntly about that. Like, I went through a very hard divorce because I was with a woman. I was in the state of Georgia. I was
But she means a divorce from her husband.
husband.
She
From
was
a husband.
already with a woman, and that made the legal aspect very difficult
In the
because-
90s.
Yeah, because
in Georgia.
judges weren't open to women that were breaking up marriages.
Yeah.
For that kind of relationship, although the marriage was broken already.
Yeah.
Andria just had found refuge.
Yeah. So, all right, I lost my train of thought.
The kids.
No, we were just talking about your children, and you said you talked with them.
Yes, the kids have always been very, they're city kids. They were, they went to the school in Atlanta, so they've been exposed to all sorts of cultures, all sorts of kids, all sorts of situations with parents, whether, they have other parents that have changed their sex, or are in a relationship with the same sex, or if their parent is, has cocaine issues, or city kids deal with things, I think
With real life, yeah.
openly, and it kind of rolls, things roll off their back.
Especially this generation.
Yeah,
They're
I think that
exposed.
talking to the kids
Yeah.
about this, though, it's never been a thing. It's never been a thing. And when their friends come with them to our celebrations, and it's a non-thing. I think that the next generation is a lot more grown up than we were,
Okay,
a
very
lot more
good. Okay, so I have one final question for both of you, and I do thank you again for taking the time to share your love story. What advice do you give to, couples like yourselves? Because here's the thing, not everyone can be as transparent about their relationship or about their feelings, and so they may go into a marriage and hide it. And then all of a sudden, Pandora's box gets opened, and then it's a big mess. So what advice do you have for couples?
And you're talking specifically, people might get into a relationship that are bisexual, or have had a homosexual past,
Yes.
or something like that, and they can't.
Yes.
I don't know, because I'm just the type of person that I don't lead, or I'm learning this even 10 years in. I don't want to lead with ego. I don't want to protect myself. I'm not in a relationship to protect myself and to have a shell. I want to be vulnerable, and I want to grow. So if those two things happen, it's because we communicate. I mean, we're always talking through stuff, and it's not always happy.
I think if you can't share something critical like that, I think you've got to question how, are you ready to get married? with this other person?
Because married means a lot of talking, and uncomfortable talking, vulnerable talking. But you can't simultaneously be vulnerable and have ego, and have that work. One's got to win out. You got to be vulnerable, and
it takes a lot of maturity. And I think the fact that it was a second marriage for both of us, we had been through the hard stuff. The hard stuff is when families break up, when you lose a committed relationship, and you don't want to go through that crap again, for sure.
Yeah.
So maybe that helped us both accept this idea that we have to be more vulnerable, we have to share all of our stories. And then you find there wasn't a shock to me, and to find out even early on that Andrea was bisexual. And then when our relationship became romantic and then became a full-blown romance, and then we're going to get married, it never even crossed my mind, does the fact that she's bisexual change anything?
But see, that's the kind of person I attracted to, and that I'm attracted to, is a person that it wouldn't be a situation, or that I wouldn't have a welcome feeling from his sister or his brother. I'm too old for that. It's like I know what I wanted, and I wanted my heart to open, and because it had closed down so much. So I think that I wanted to keep growing, and if a person's getting into a relationship and they are not fully honest with the person they're relating to, then you're not fully relating, and I wanted that. So you have to be vulnerable. You got to give something up to get something.
It's a risk,
Yeah.
It's a risk to share that much.
But not too much, because you hold it.
Well,
so
I mean,
kindly.
no, but I learned that that's what you do in a relationship. That's what you have to do if you want to, keep your relationship alive, is protect that person and respect the vulnerability. And when you share something that could be taken badly, or could, whether it's my ego or my selfishness, or the fact that I'm preoccupied with my little, concerns, whatever it is, you have to accept that person. And yeah, you can shine a light on that, default, but you don't let that layer interfere with the deepest layer and the commitment. But you don't make that commitment unless you're pretty sure about that person. And I don't think you get there by just sharing the light stuff.
I agree with that. Okay. And on that note, I'm just going to say that, when you're in a relationship for the second or third or fourth time, or however many times, a marriage specifically, we all come to the table with baggage. So you have to be able to unpack that baggage. As you've said, you've got to be open, you've got to be honest, and you have to pour your heart out. And it sounds like you've done all of that. And I wish you another 10, 20, 30, 40 years of marriage.
Thank you.
Good news you can use for your life. So listen up, everybody. Listen up, everybody. She got the good news you can use. Good news you can use for your life. If you want to get the info that'll help you throughout your life. Yeah.